Part 1. The Fire and the Fragility. They say you meet people for a reason. And I, Elara, met Caleb in the wreckage of my life. The fluorescent lights of the AA meeting room felt harsh, yet they illuminated a raw, shared vulnerability that was more intimate than any darkness. I was 33, my heart a fractured mess of shame and tentative hope. Just 3 months prior, I had stumbled back into the sanctuary, my 5 years of hard-won sobriety shattered by a brief, devastating relapse. The shame of those lost years, that was a physical weight I carried every day. Caleb, he was 38, 10 months sober. He sat across the circle from me, a quiet storm of a man. His eyes, though weary, held a startling depth, the kind that came from truly staring into the void of addiction. He carried the weight of a lifetime spent chasing oblivion, a history I only glimpsed in the careful lines around his mouth when he spoke. He didn't try to be charismatic. He radiated a quiet strength that felt like an anchor in my own swirling chaos. I watched him, drawn to the careful sincerity in his voice when he shared his story, a voice that never tried to lecture, only to connect. Our connection wasn't subtle. It was an intense combustion. We skipped all the polite, cautious steps of normal dating. We were two people who understood the absolute fragility of life, the constant threat of collapse. When you've survived a war, you don't waste time on small talk. We talked for hours after meetings, sharing secrets and horrors that would send a normal person running. This shared trauma, this mutual understanding of the abyss, forged an immediate, fierce intimacy. We were desperate for something real, something solid. We were exhausted by loneliness. Everyone in the program warned us, easy does it. Don't start a relationship in the first year of sobriety. We heard the warnings, the sage advice, echoing around us, but we dismissed them. We felt unique. We felt like we were healing together. We made it official in a rush of shared promises and whispered commitments. 7 weeks, that was all the time we had for stolen glances over lukewarm coffee, the intense thrill of recovery dates, and the dizzying intimacy of finally being seen. Then the outside world intervened. Caleb got the job offer. 2 months out of state. It was a golden ticket, a chance for real money, real stability, a concrete step away from his past. I tried to mirror his joy, but a chilling anxiety, the old familiar fear of abandonment, settled in my stomach. 2 months felt like an eternity. I feared this sudden, fragile connection would snap under the crushing strain of distance and the demands of his new, intense work schedule. The anxiety hadn't even had time to properly fester before fate delivered its ultimate twist. A week before he was scheduled to leave, I found out I was pregnant. Pregnancy. It was too much. Too fast. Too heavy for our delicate, still shaking world. We plunged into a dizzying, agonizing cycle of conversations. Could we do this? Could two people built on a foundation of recovery bring a new life into the world? The moral weight was staggering. We decided to go through with it. We decided we would make it work, no matter what. The baby became the anchor, the reason to fight for what we had, even as the 2-month separation loomed. But there was a shadow, a toxic, poisonous shadow from my past. While I was deep in my addiction, I had been tangled up in a situationship with a man I called Mark. He was manipulative, a creature of the chaos that mirrored my addiction. I was only 2 months sober when Caleb and I became official, and the unhealthy attachment, the addiction to him, to the drama he provided, was still there. I told Caleb about Mark, but Mark wouldn't let me go. I should have blocked him immediately, but a dark, fragile part of my ego, still reeling from the insecurities of early sobriety, found a twisted, terrible satisfaction in his groveling. It felt like proof I still mattered. Then Caleb left. The airport scene was painful. The distance was a constant, physical ache. Our communication plan quickly fell apart. Caleb worked the graveyard shift out west. I worked days in a prison, with no access to my phone. Different time zones only compounded the sporadic communication. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. The sporadic connection was a corrosive drip of loneliness and doubt. In that void, the doubts began to gnaw, relentless and insidious. Did I love him, or was I just clinging to him because I was pregnant? Was this too fast? The passionate fire felt muted, distant, threatened by the wind of separation. A month into his absence, the unimaginable happened. I had a miscarriage. It was a devastating, silent loss that hollowed me out. The baby, the anchor, it was gone. And in the wake of that grief, my feelings for Caleb didn't return. They retreated. The loss, combined with the distance, magnified every doubt. I started questioning if I really loved him. I could feel myself becoming more and more distant with him. I was terrified to break up with him because I remembered the fierce strength of my feelings before he moved, so I clung to the hope that my feelings were simply on hiatus. I wanted to hold on and see if the spark would reignite when he moved back to town. I had to tell him. During one of our brief, sporadic calls, I confessed that I felt like my love for him wasn't growing, that I felt distant, but that I still wanted to try, hoping the spark would return. I could almost hear the life drain out of him. But he was grace itself. He understood, he said. He was willing to make it work, too. A mutual agreement to suspend judgment. But Mark never stopped. He knew I was vulnerable. He started weaving an intricate lie. He claimed he had found dirt on Caleb, something he could only show me in person. The sickness of my old attachment, the addiction to chaos, flared up. A week before Caleb was due home, I made the mistake. I ended up sleeping with him a week before my boyfriend came home and immediately regretted it and blocked him. It was instantaneous regret, a tidal wave of self-loathing. Turns out he was lying about the dirt he supposedly found. The moment it was over, the unhealthy attachment, the magnetic, twisted pull Mark had over me, it vanished. The sickness was gone, replaced by a devastating guilt, but also a fierce, renewed clarity. When Caleb finally came home, a floodgate opened. My love and feelings for him completely came back and continued to grow stronger and stronger. The relief of his presence, the warmth of his embrace, it eclipsed everything. I could never imagine doing that to him again. I knew Mark was just a final toxic gasp of my old life. 3 months we had of golden, intense rebuilding. We were strong. We were truly in love. But Mark, the snake, found one last desperate way to strike. He realized he was never going to hear from me again, so he found Caleb, and he sent him the proof. Screenshots of us meeting up. My boyfriend was devastated. The betrayal, the devastation. It was a wound I inflicted, a scar I would carry forever. After a lot of discussions and talks around it, Caleb, the man who had fought for his life and his sobriety, fought for us. He decided to forgive me. 3 months after that, it seemed like he finally healed because it wasn't brought up anymore. Our relationship was even stronger. The love we have for each other was so powerful. I felt horrible regardless. Part 2. The facade crumbles. The forgiveness Caleb extended to me for my betrayal with Mark was a crushing, undeserved gift, an act of profound, terrifying grace. We spent the next 3 months carefully, painstakingly rebuilding a shared reality. Our love was undeniably strong, forged in the terrible fire of my confession, our connection profound and palpable. We had faced the absolute near-death of our future, and we survived. The topic of Mark completely faded. It wasn't brought up anymore. We believed the worst was behind us. Our relationship was even stronger, and the love we have for each other was so powerful. But the guilt, I felt horrible regardless. It was a constant, quiet presence, a private reminder of the promise I had made to myself and to him. We settled into a rhythm of sobriety and deep, almost desperate commitment. 5 months passed since his forgiveness, 8 months since he returned from his out-of-state job. We were in a solid place. Caleb was an amazing boyfriend, dedicated, present, showering me with love every single day. I trusted him implicitly. He was my rock, the man who had shown me the way back to stability and grace. One late night, a familiar insomnia crept in. Caleb was sleeping soundly beside me, his breathing deep and even, completely at peace. I was restless, unable to settle. The house was silent, the darkness amplifying a low, inexplicable anxiety that had nothing to do with Caleb, but everything to do with the lingering trauma of my past. I picked up his phone. My initial motivation was absurdly innocent, even banal. I told myself I was curious what kind of porn he likes to watch. It was a weak excuse for a deeply intrusive act, but it was the truth. I was expecting a fleeting, silly insight. But once I had the device in my hand, the compulsion to look deeper was overwhelming. The screen lit up, reflecting the cold, accusatory light in my own suddenly tense eyes. The phone felt heavy, charged with secrets I hadn't even consciously admitted I was looking for. I ignored the browser history. I decided to snoop even further. I went to his text messages, and there she was. Veronica. I recognized the name. The woman he had worked with while he was out of state, the one who gave him rides to the graveyard shift. I knew about this woman because she would give him rides to work. My initial assessment of her flashed through my mind. She was in her 50s, not conventionally attractive at all. I had dismissed her as entirely safe, very maternal looking. Because of that shallow judgment, I hadn't worried at all. The messages proved my initial dismissal was a catastrophic, fatal error. I scrolled down, my breath catching in my throat, the blood draining from my face. The texts were from the period after he had left her job, a final, decisive exchange. I found messages of him telling her that he wants to work it out with me, Elara, and that they need to keep their friendship strictly platonic. He sent her a long message telling her that what they were doing needed to stop. What they were doing. The phrase slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. The sudden, nauseating realization of a secret life he had been leading. A life he had hidden while I was grieving, while I was confessing my own sins. This was a confession wrapped in a cold breakup text. This wasn't just a friendly chat. This was an explicit severance of intimacy. The dread coiled tight in my stomach. Her response was sharp, angry, and deeply hurt. The pain in her words was palpable, and it solidified my worst fears. And then, the final, undeniable, pathetic detail. He apologized for sending her a cuddle buddy application. A cuddle buddy application. The word spun in my head, a ridiculous, cruel confirmation. My hands started trembling violently. My profound, debilitating guilt over Mark instantly evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard, righteous sense of betrayal. He was ending something serious enough to warrant a formal, desperate message and an apology for that kind of code word. He had been intimate with her, and he had concealed it. I woke him up. The confrontation was immediate, brutal, and horrifyingly symmetrical to the scene 5 months earlier. I thrust the phone at him, the screen burning in the dark, my voice shaking with a terrifying mixture of grief and rage. He was panicked, stammering, his face pale with fear. He claimed the only thing he did was send her that application, and they hugged a couple times. He stuck to the first, easiest lie. I looked at Caleb, the man who had demanded total honesty from me, and I had a difficult time believing that was all that happened. The tone of the messages, Veronica's anger, his need to formally stop their relationship, it all screamed of a deeper lie. The fear in his eyes wasn't just the fear of being caught, it was the fear of being caught lying about the true extent of the betrayal. The next morning, the desperation for truth was a physical sickness. I needed the full, unvarnished facts. I found Veronica on Facebook. My pride was gone. I sent her a message explaining who I was, what I had found, and the partial lies Caleb was clinging to. I just needed the truth to heal, even if it destroyed me. She answered quickly. She was still bitter about his abrupt termination. She didn't hesitate to give me the clarity I sought. She shared that they had sex twice. Twice. The number felt cruelly insignificant, yet it confirmed everything. It shattered his entire defense of a couple of hugs. My heart ached, not just from the betrayal, but from the crushing realization that he had actively hidden this from me for months, letting me carry the entire weight of our shame and guilt alone. I confronted him again that night. There was no more denying the evidence. Veronica told me everything. I said, the words heavy and flat. She said it was sex. Twice. He broke. He admitted it, collapsing into sobs, apologizing profusely. He repeated the weak excuse, saying he didn't want to hurt me by telling me they slept together. It was a cowardly lie, but there was a devastating truth underneath it. The timing of his actions twisted the dagger. He confessed they had slept together around the time after I had the miscarriage and told him my feelings weren't growing anymore. That was the fracture point. When I confessed my emotional distance, when the anchor of the baby was gone, he cracked. His rationale was rooted in that primal fear. He was afraid my feelings for him weren't going to come back, but he didn't want to let me go because he hoped that they would when he came back. He sought comfort and validation in Veronica's arms, convinced I was already halfway out the door. I was hurt, of course, and really disappointed that he couldn't fess up to that when he found out I cheated on him, and that he initially lied when I found the text messages. But then the symmetry hit me. I made the same mistake. I had been there, driven by the same fear and the same instability. The single detail that tipped the scales towards forgiveness was his final choice. He ended it with her 3 weeks before he was coming home. He could have continued sleeping with her up until the day he left, but he didn't. He cut ties, decisively, demonstrating a commitment to our future, even if it was born of immense fear. I decided to forgive him because I made the same mistake, and I knew in my heart of hearts I would never make that mistake again. His early decision to end it with Veronica made the path to a terrifying, mutual forgiveness clear. Part 3. The Reckoning and the Path Forward. The decision to forgive Caleb was not a single, heroic act, but a slow, agonizing slide into inevitability, a process that required me to look past his failure and into the mirror of my own. How could I condemn him for seeking comfort in loneliness and fear when I had done precisely the same? Our betrayals were devastatingly symmetrical, an impossible, heart-wrenching reflection. The brief, furious moment of moral superiority I felt, the shock, the rage, collapsed under the crushing weight of my own actions with Mark. We were two equally flawed, equally broken architects, standing in the ruins of the foundation we had rushed to lay only 7 weeks before he left. The realization was terrifying, but profoundly intimate. We weren't just two people trying to repair a relationship. We were two survivors of the same emotional disaster, bonded by mutual shame. Our sins, in a sense, canceled each other out in the terrible mathematics of the heart, leaving us with zero moral superiority, but an unprecedented level of shared, ugly truth. We had both failed, and now we had to heal together. We spent days and nights revisiting the timeline, not just the events, but the profound emotional landscape of those critical months. We mapped out the trauma, the raw wound of the miscarriage, my confession of emotional distance, Caleb's profound, agonizing fear that my feelings would never return, the loneliness of his isolation, the long dark hours of the graveyard shift out of state, the quiet desperation that led him to Veronica. I finally understood the terror he felt when I confessed my distance. He had invested his entire future, his sobriety, his fragile hope into us, and when I wavered, he felt everything crumble. He sought reassurance, a temporary anchor, precisely when I was at my most distant. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me, Elara. He confessed repeatedly, his voice ragged with lingering pain. You were everything. My recovery, my stability, the future I fought for. When the baby was gone, and you told me you weren't sure you loved me, I was 2,000 miles away and I was convinced I was losing everything. I didn't want to break up, but I needed to feel wanted. It was a mistake, a desperate, cowardly attempt to survive that fear. I ended it with Veronica because I knew I loved you. I knew I had to come home and fight for us. His honesty, finally stripped of the initial lies and rationalizations, was a powerful, necessary anodyne. I recognized the desperate chase for comfort, the emotional self-medication that mirrored my own brief, toxic relapse with Mark. I had sought drama and validation in my past. He had sought intimacy and reassurance in his profound loneliness. We were both chasing the same fleeting relief, terrified of the emotional void. The saving grace, the detail that made true forgiveness possible, was his choice to end the affair. He ended it with Veronica 3 weeks before he came home. He could have kept the option open. He could have continued sleeping with her up until the day he left. But he didn't. He made the conscious, difficult decision to sever the toxic tie, demonstrating a commitment to our relationship before he even knew if my feelings would, in fact, return. That choice demonstrated genuine remorse and intent to rebuild, something I held onto fiercely. The healing process this time was entirely different. It wasn't about one person bestowing grace upon the other. It was about two people forgiving themselves through the eyes of the other. We had to establish radical honesty as the new, unwavering foundation. We laid down strict boundaries, and most importantly, a commitment to immediate, painful truth, no matter how ugly or frightening it felt. We vowed to be each other's safest place, the one person to whom we could confess fear and vulnerability without the relationship immediately collapsing. We learned that communication was not just about sharing logistics, but about sharing the depths of our emotional terror. We spent months in painstaking, agonizing recovery. We didn't rush this time. We revisited every moment of the first 7 weeks, every stress point of the separation, the trauma of the miscarriage, the moments of silence, and the resulting breakdowns in our connection. We realized that our initial connection had been so intense partly because it was an escape from the pain of addiction. The moment that intense focus was broken by distance and loss, our core unhealthy coping mechanisms, fear, secrecy, and seeking external validation, kicked back in. We are now 14 months into our relationship, a tenure that feels both fleeting and like a lifetime, measured not in peaceful days, but in crises overcome. We have reached a surprisingly solid place. Caleb is an amazing boyfriend, dedicated, present, and showering me with love every single day. He's not just a partner. He's a rock, committed to his recovery and to our shared future. We've become the relationship we rushed into becoming, a partnership forged in the flames of addiction, loss, and mutual infidelity. The sheer strength of our current bond is proof of the profound honesty we forced ourselves into. Our love is no longer the fragile, desperate thing it was in the beginning. It is resilient, scarred, and undeniably real. The shared scar of mutual betrayal is not a weakness. It is a constant, quiet reminder of our worst capacity, and a promise that we will never let the relationship decay to that point again. Because we both cheated, we have an impossible, brutal understanding of the other's failure. It strips away all judgment and forces us into true, sustainable vulnerability. I needed one last quiet affirmation for my own peace of mind. A few weeks after the second confrontation, I looked through his phone again. But this time, I did it with his full knowledge and consent. It wasn't a search for betrayal. It was a final test of my own healing and trust. I needed to see that I could look and find nothing, and that the act of looking didn't shatter me. And I found nothing. There was nothing else in his phone besides the remnants of that one mistake with Veronica, a chapter finally closed. The man who cheated out of fear is not the man I wake up next to today. He is secure, supported, and grounded in a relationship that has survived 2 lethal blows. Part 4. The question of forever and the bright future. The wreckage had been cleared. The foundation, twice shattered and rebuilt, now felt solid, reinforced not by blind hope, but by shared, agonizing, symmetrical truth. We had achieved a stability born not of peace, but of shared combat. Yet the essential, terrifying question lingered in the quiet corners of my mind. The question I would like to hear input on: can he do this again? It is the natural, paralyzing paranoia of a wounded heart, the constant, low-grade fear that follows any profound breach of trust. When friends asked, "Should you really stay with him?" I realized their judgment was based on a unilateral, clear-cut betrayal. But our story defies such simple moralizing. We were a couple who had committed mutual infidelity, driven by the same core, deep-seated anxieties rooted in addiction, distance, and loss. When I look at Caleb today, I don't see the man who lied about Veronica. I see the man who wakes up every single day and actively chooses sobriety, chooses commitment, and chooses the difficult, uncomfortable path of radical honesty. The Caleb who cheated was operating on deep, raw fear, the fear that his future was crumbling, the trauma of the miscarriage, the immense emotional isolation of his job. He was a man reverting to old, toxic patterns under extreme duress. The Caleb of today is fundamentally different. He is secure, supported, and grounded in a relationship that has forced him to confront his deepest vulnerabilities. He is such an amazing boyfriend and is so dedicated and showers me with love every day. There was also nothing else in his phone besides that one woman. No other secrets, no other shadows. That singular, contained mistake, made under singular, extreme circumstances, is what I cling to. Our past is no longer a secret weapon we could wield against each other. It is a shared, intimate scar. It's a constant, silent reminder of how quickly we can both fall when we let fear and loneliness dictate our actions. Because we both cheated, we have an impossible, brutal understanding of the other's failure. This terrifying symmetry is the strangest kind of grace. It strips away all possible moral high ground, forcing us to stand on completely equal footing, equally responsible for the volatility of our beginnings. We learn that the opposite of addiction isn't just sobriety. It is connection, and we had both risked that connection out of fear. I believe in him. More importantly, I believe in us. The Mark drama, my own catastrophic failure, solidified my commitment to sobriety and my intense, fierce love for Caleb. It was the final toxic gasp of my old life. The discovery of the Veronica incident solidified our commitment to radical honesty and our understanding of each other's specific emotional triggers. We didn't break entirely. We sealed the gaps with a stronger, more resilient bond, one that was finally based on the unvarnished truth. It also made it easy to forgive because he ended it with her weeks before he even planned on coming home, when he could have continued sleeping with her up until the day he left. That proactive choice speaks volumes about his intent to return and commit. We are actively planning our future now. Not a rushed, panicked future based on desperation, but a deliberate, slow-building one. We talk about finding a new place together, about the quiet joy of shared evening routines, about the boring, beautiful mundanity that comes with true, hard-won stability. He smiles at me across the dinner table, and in his eyes, I no longer see the man who lied. I see the man who fought for my forgiveness, who confessed his failure, and who has worked tirelessly every single day since to be worthy of the grace I extended. And in my heart, I know he sees the same commitment and dedication in me. The journey from the desperation of the AA meeting room to this quiet, powerful love has been a terrifying series of explosions, near misses, and profound emotional surgery. We faced the absolute worst parts of ourselves, our capacity for fear, deception, and ultimate failure, and found that beneath the trauma and the lingering addiction, there was a core of decency and a genuine, powerful love worth fighting for. We are two people who screwed up spectacularly in the beginning, who made the ultimate mistakes, but who chose, fundamentally, to be better. We chose forgiveness. We chose the fire. And we chose each other. And that daily conscious choice, to choose truth over comfort, commitment over convenience, and forgiveness over resentment, that is the true, hard-won foundation of our forever. We were wrong in the beginning, yes, but we are deeply, profoundly right now. We took the longest, hardest road, but we finally made it home.